let's kick it off. Good afternoon once again, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on discovering the power of climate-conscious consumers. This webinar is a part of our Climate Click by South Pole client-based webinar series, where we aim to provide a front row seat insights and solutions from our valued clients, as we, of course, collaboratively navigate the challenges and opportunities around many businesses in terms of climate change that concerns the world, of course, also in general. A couple of housekeeping rules for you. You will be muted the whole time during the webinar. So for questions, please feel free to submit those using the question box that you have on your panel. And we will have a question and answer portion right before the end to attend to those questions as well. And of course, the session will be recorded. So basically, on to the next slide. I'm very excited to introduce to you the panel for today. We are joined by Michael Ader, who is our business development lead in the DACH region, Robert Pothofer, business development lead for Climate Click, the digital solution, Maggie Wong, who's our climate communications lead specialist, and of course, last but not least, our guest panelist, Philippe Windsor, who's the chief marketing officer at A&O Hostels. A quick overview on the agenda for today. We will cover a brief introduction of South Pole, and then go into South Pole and the e-commerce industry and the role we play in it, delving deeper into pioneering the world of commerce to provide you a couple of best practices or examples actually with clients that we have already collaborated with. Then comes, of course, A&O Hostels, Philippe covering or providing insights into how they accelerate climate action within the travel and accommodation industry. And of course, a very important thing is expert advice, basically, on how to claim the right impact on your journey. Of course, the Q&A portion after that. So if you have made your way to this webinar, you already know a little bit about South Pole. However, for those of you who didn't know, here's a quick introduction about us. So South Pole is an impact-driven climate company and the world's leading climate project developer and solutions provider. We have been in business for almost 2 decades now. So we create projects and tools to empower absolutely everyone and everywhere to play their part in, of course, creating and achieving a more livable future for our future generations. Just to give you a coverage of our breadth. So a world of experience is something we are proud of. We have implemented climate projects all over the world and have experts in over 40 local offices and representations, well, globally. Without further ado, I'd like to pass on the baton to Michael Ader, who then will be covering e-commerce and South Pole and how funding climate action with every purchase is really a simple thing to do.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Sarah, for setting the scene so nicely, and also for introducing South Pole. I want to zoom a little out and give a little state of the union where we are when it comes to climate action and inaction in numbers and finance. And according to the experts at the United Nations, they estimate that we need annually $5 trillion to have a chance to achieve the 1.5 degree target that we all signed up for in Paris 2015. What we see today currently is that there's $100 billion pledged by developed countries to flow into climate action. And I'm not sure how it is for you, but for me, those terms are very confusing sometimes, and trillion and billion, and what does that actually mean? And here I've got 2 little graphs or graphics that illustrate what those sums actually would look like. So we see a trillion or a billion is a lot of money, but a trillion is a whole lot of money. You see on the lower left side, the little red person standing there is still illustrated, and you basically see a trillion is a lot of money, and we need 5 trillion annually to combat the climate crisis. But given that we know that our global GDP has reached 100 trillion in 2022, It actually means that we need 5% of our global GDP in order to effectively combat the climate crisis. That is only speaking of money, but of course that money needs to go into the right actions and the right climate projects. To have a bit of a different view of what's needed and where we are today, we see different pathways. We see that if we get on the right pathway now, there's still a whole lot needed or missing when we compare it to the current policies that you see in green, where we end up at around 3.5% degree warming. When we take all those voluntary pledges together, we are still not getting there and reaching maybe 2.5 to 3 degree warming. So that means there's still a gap, and we need everyone to get involved. We need more climate action at a faster pace, and we need it now, or better, yesterday, and not only by tomorrow. And yeah, that's what we're here for at South Pole. Of course, we cannot do it alone. We work with pioneers, we work with you, with the corporations, but we also want to provide climate action solutions to everyone who wants to get involved, and we indeed need everyone to get involved and to play a role. If we go to the next slide, exactly. And if you see that, well, if your company does something, maybe it's not only a nice to have, but as we get more and more savvy when it comes to climate science, to climate change, we also see the consumers get more and more involved. And modern day consumers, and that's what very different market research is showing, are really demanding a genuine commitment and sustainability when it comes to the brands that they want to buy from. So we see 75% of European consumers want their retailers to have really a climate strategy in place. We see even more, 82%, according to Internet Retailing, of consumers want to see the companies really put planet before profit. And we still see 40%, according to Deloitte, of consumers that really put money where their mouth is, and they say they would be even willing to pay a premium when it comes to making the right decision at the counter. This is today's consumer base, but when we look at younger generations, it even gets more clear that the younger generation that we see is more conscious when it comes to buying decisions. They want their brands to actively engage and transform the way they conduct business. And we see that, especially in the fashion industries, Gen Z consumers, 90% of them want their brands, the companies that they buy from, want to get actively involved in making this world a better place and taking care about the climate. 35% of millennials have even made changes already to their purchasing behavior when they compare it to the past 5 years. And 79% of people who have heard of brands and actually communicating around their sustainability actions and are likely to trust their messaging. So it also it's very important on how you deliver the message and you communicate the actions that you're doing. And that's what we can help you along the way with. So at South Pole, we usually help companies in getting started on their climate journey, no matter where they are. So we help you measure your footprint, we help you set targets, reduce your footprint, but also to fund climate action and to communicate and lead. And our digital solutions, so the solutions that we focus on in this webinar, are located in those 4th and 5th step of the climate journey. So they fund climate action and they really help you engage with your consumers in a transparent and trustworthy way. On the next slide, we see a little sneak preview of what this could look like. So here you see a mock-up of our Climate Click e-commerce solution that lets your consumers fund climate action based on their purchases. And we say it's as simple as that. And in the next section, I want to hand over to my colleague Robert to give some real-life examples of customers that we already work with today.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. I'd like to show you a few examples of what we do with our customers who use our Climate Click software. First and foremost, I want to show you this example of our work that we do with eBay in Germany. So we've actually done 2 things with them. first of all, we've modeled CO2 estimates, carbon estimates of the footprint of products across their full catalog of around 16,000 categories. So we ran that through a model to estimate the carbon emissions that are linked to products that fit within those categories, and then empower consumers to offset carbon emissions to fund climate action in the checkout process of eBay Germany. The other thing that we've done is we've helped eBay to set up what they call the Carbon Hub, which is essentially a platform linked to your eBay account, which gives you insights into the footprint estimates of all of your last 12 months purchases, and then empowers you to compensate additionally above and beyond what you could have already done in that checkout process. This has become quite a big success in Germany. The Carbon Hub has already seen around 1 million visitors just in the first year, and it's also receiving a lot of positive feedback from eBay buyers across the board. Southpole also worked together with eBay to shape basically the narrative and the communication support around the Carbon Hub so that people understand it in the right way. And we communicate around this transparently and accurately. But Maggie is here today to tell you a bit more about that. So then if we go to the next slide, of course, not everyone is eBay. So I also want to highlight the fact that there are other ways to engage your customers, your consumers in climate action. I think the most important aspects there is engagement. Explain transparently that you are on a climate journey. You're not perfect from the start, but you're taking steps towards your climate goals, and your consumers can be there every step of the way to contribute towards your climate targets. So as said, transparency is really important there. Also, community building, which can be done on a Carbon Hub, but it can also be done in simpler ways, which I'll tell you a bit more later. So on the next slide, you'll see one of the best practice examples of one of our customers here in the Netherlands. If you follow the climate journey 1, 2, 3, 4, basically what they've done is they'll engage the consumer. They'll start engaging customers on the landing page with a header, for example. They transparently communicate about the carbon footprint estimates on a product page. And a very important thing here is adding elements of social proof. So let consumers know that this is a collective effort. They're not the only ones asked to contribute. Other people are contributing as well. And there's a huge result here of this collective effort already. It's important to communicate around that as well. And then finally, give some additional information during checkout. Explain what climate action projects can be supported with such a project. And if you get this right throughout the customer journey, if you make that engaging, if you make that informative and transparent, you'll see that this is likely to increase your conversions overall. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into that. Why does that increase conversions? What we see, and also what Michael touched on earlier, is that consumers really do want to make a sustainable choice. They want to contribute, they feel it's important, and they want to be empowered to make the right decision, basically. But what we also see is that there's quite a big intention-action gap sometimes. So people say that they want to take climate action, they say they want to make the sustainable choice, but they don't always do that, because making the sustainable choice or taking climate action isn't always the simplest thing to do. So what we try to do with our software and with the communication around that is to close that intention-action gap. So to make it easy for people to understand the impact of the choices they make, and to also make it easy for consumers to fund climate action and to do the right thing. And then, of course, finally, doing the right thing feels great. I think everybody recognizes that. And from our data, we see that consumers feel that taking the right decision actually feels so great that even having the possibility of funding climate action makes them more likely to be engaged throughout your customer journey. It leads to less cart abandonments. It leads to higher conversion rates because people feel more strongly about your brand. They're engaged throughout the customer journey, and they want to contribute to those climate goals together with their favorite brand. Then on the next slide, making this a little bit more tangible. This is a lot of text, but it's a collection of positive headlines that eBay Germany received last year around a campaign they did around Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So they gave out vouchers for people to use during those days, Black Friday, Cyber Monday days, for people to make their purchase together with that voucher, and every purchase with that voucher would be compensated, climate compensated for by eBay themselves. So they made this a whole marketing campaign around it. Ultimately, they funded around, I think, 7,000 tons in carbon credits, which is a huge result, and it got a lot of positive press. And I think if we go to the next slide, such a program is probably the best way really to get started today. Maybe the prospect of a carbon hub sounds a little daunting in the sense that it's a complete new environment. This is something that you need to set up. It takes a bit of development time, takes a bit of design time. You need to make a project around it. That's not something you can do today. What is something that you can do today is setting up such a campaign, which is a great way to gauge interest among your consumers for the topic of climate action. So what you can do is you can define a scope and a duration of such a pilot campaign. This can be done through Black Friday, Cyber Monday, through Christmas, or any other period. Make sure that consumer behavior is actually traceable. So, for example, by using coupons or discount codes or things like that. Contact South Pole and let us help you with advice on communication. Again, Maggie is here today to tell you a bit more about that. And then what we can do is every purchase that is made during this pilot period, you can send a simple CSV or Excel file to us with all of the purchases, all of the products that were sold. We can run carbon emission estimates across all of that portfolio and give you the number of carbon emissions linked to that portfolio of products. And then finally, of course, the most important step is then you can fund climate action, purchase the carbon credits, and communicate your impact back to your consumers to round off that campaign. That's a very simple thing to get started. And now here is over to Philippe from A&O Hostels to tell you about what they did in their campaigns.
Yeah, thank you, Robert, and welcome everyone. Yes, A&O Hostels is the biggest hostel chain. We run 28,000 beds in 39 hostels across 9 countries. And to make European city trips affordable for everyone is our goal. And this is what we see behind our claim, everyone can travel. And it's not only the deep value proposition of A&O Hostels rooms or services, it's of course, and today even more than yesterday, responsibility. So environmental awareness, sustainability, and the preservation of natural environment are deeply linked to our company's DNA. We are committed to creating a better world for our guests, the environment, and the future generations. And that's why we have the ambitious goal to become Europe's first net zero hostel business. And not only in the far future, even soon in 2025. And this is also our ambitious answer to actual travel shame discussions. But we can't achieve this goal alone. And that's why we need to empower our guests to play their part as well. And who our guests are can be seen on the next page. More than 70% of our guests are 30 years or younger. 1/3 of our business is school trips. During summer, our hostels are full with young families with kids. So millennials, Gen Z, our core target group, and they do care a lot about sustainability, and they love to educate themselves and learn more about it. They make their purchase decisions or travel decisions based on true, transparent, and clear sustainable actions on their service providers. And this is 100% in line with our values and goals. So climate has really become, climate has become mainstream discussion right now. And having a corporate net zero emission target is not exceptional. It's that minimum requirement, not only for millennials or Gen Z. We even see higher standards across Europe, where consumer watchdogs in Netherlands, in Germany, in UK have put out clear guidelines on companies' environmental claims. In fact, the EU Parliament has just published its draft bill on green claims. The French government has even made laws with strict requirements on when companies can claim carbon neutral. So it's all about being honest and transparent to the three biggest goods you have as a company. It's your customers, your employees, and your environment. And this is how our climate journey began. On the next slide. By being active in the accommodation sector, we simply can't avoid having an impact on the climate. That's why we have been looking for a smart e-commerce solution through which our guests can play their part. And with Southport's Climate Click, we found the perfect tool to fund climate action. But before we deep dive into the integration of Southport's Climate Click tool at A&O Hostels, I'd like to show you what we have done, been done so far, and what we want to do in the future. So if you have a look, back in 2015, we measured our carbon footprint per overnight stay for the first time with external professionals. An 8.5 kilogram per overnight stay was already a great result. As a hostel, we don't have any pool or spa area or no ACs, less conference rooms, and more people share the same space like in a budget hotel or even higher products. But we also recognize that these 8.5 kilogram per overnight is a treasure, but we can and need to do more, or in that case, less. We asked all our employees about actions we can do. We created a fantastic list with more than 200 action points to further decrease our climate impact. And 7 years later, in the year 2022, we have been able to decrease our carbon footprint to 3.9 kilogram per overnight. And we have a clear roadmap to further reduce it. And part of our road to zero is to empower our guests to play their part via Southport's Climate Click. Next slide sums it up once more. In hostel business, your asset or building is super important for energy saving. So we improved insulation, installed heat pumps, installed photovoltaic systems, reduced and changed our car fleets to e-vehicles, and motivate our suppliers to be more sustainable, and even have changed some suppliers according to these guidelines. And in parallel, we have integrated Southport's Climate Click, as you can see on the next page. And our guests can now play their part and fund certified climate projects or actions. The technical integration in front end and back end was super easy for web and app. Thanks to the availability of an API, the integration takes only a few hours. And for us, Southport was and is the perfect partner, and we hope to set a positive example here, not only for our industry, but for everyone who runs an e-commerce business. Then I would like to hand over to next one.
Thank you very much, Philip. And this is where I come in, where we will talk about claims. And I know everyone has heard Philip talk about how important it is to have your claims right. And this is exactly what this is about. You're doing the great thing, you're doing the right thing, but sometimes what you say is actually just as important as what you are doing. And here is just a couple of very quick examples of some of the great companies out there that's doing great stuff, but sometimes if they use some certain terminologies, it might make them a target for scrutiny as well, just because climate is such a mainstream topic now, and it is something that everyone should be aware of, and particularly in the European regions. I know there's a lot of people today joining from across Europe. There are certain regulations that may come through, especially around the EU regions, where they will have a provisional agreement now around banning climate neutral claims by 2026. This is something that companies will be affected by. And in the next slide, I have pulled some quick topics from this particular provision. What I'm going to do is not go through everything, but once you receive these slides, you can really read through it. But this is just to say that for companies that are in the European Union region, some of the things that they say will really be looked at and checked against. And so you really need to be careful what you talk about when you are talking about the climate action that you are doing. So in the next slide, one of the research that South Pole has also done this year is looking at what certain sectors are going to be affected the most. Some of these are the targeted sectors that you will see. A lot of these will be kind of e-commerce related as well, but more and more regions and sectors will be involved. So this is not just a targeted challenge. This will be a global challenge for all types of businesses. One final slide, really, this is to encourage you all to not be afraid of speaking about this, because this is such an important topic for everyone to talk about. The first step in getting your climate claims right is really figuring out what you can and cannot say. One of the guiding principles that we always use at South Pole, and we advise our clients, is to really be transparent about your claims. So really back up whatever you're claiming and you're saying with the evidence. So like you've seen with Philip, he talks about the all the decarbonization activities he's doing, and also what he's doing and his targets, and really backing those up with evidence and data as well. And that's exactly what you should be doing with your claims as well, following these 5 different categories. So you can be transparent, so you can be accountable, so you show authenticity and really align your communications with your values, drive real impact, so you're showing the real actions that you're doing, and sometimes being able to show vulnerability and recognize that there is a gap and that you're doing what you can now to be able to bridge that gap is very, very powerful. So that is where I'm going to stop today, but we do have a corporate claims report that talks about all this. So I do encourage you to really download that and have a look at it yourself. So I'm now going to pass back to Zaira so that we can begin the Q&A session. And I think everyone can come back to the stage as well.
Thank you, Maggie, and thanks everyone. I hope the content has been very engaging and educational for all of you here today with us. So just to browse through a couple of questions that came in, I have one interesting here which says, can you provide a couple of ways that South Pole is going to achieve in revolutionizing e-commerce? This a little bit meaty, so I think I'd direct that question to either or together, Michael and Robert.
It's a big one. I'm not sure if we need to revolutionize e-commerce, right? But at least trying to help provide solutions, right? And thereby or achieve that with really simple solutions that are rather self-explanatory, that provide the background on what's happening with that climate money that the consumer decides to give or not to give. So really, yeah, provide solutions that are super simple and transparent and engaging, like not making it a barrier to do good in the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really about injecting climate action into that customer journey, making it a standard feature, basically, or standard element in buying in a buying experience, making it easy for everyone to understand. So providing the right information, as Maggie already said as well. And I guess, like I said, closing that action intention gap and making it accessible for people as much as possible.
Yeah, I love that. I think we can summarize that into 3 S's, right? So socialization, simplification perhaps, and what was the other one, Robert? Standardization, I suppose, right? I have here something around eBay. eBay was very interesting, but in a nutshell, what should every e-commerce business consider when it comes to sustainability? eBay, Robert, maybe I can direct that to you.
What should every e-commerce business consider when it comes to sustainability? Well, first of all, I think a big part of it is around trust. So providing the right information, as much information as possible, basically transparency, building trust among your consumers across that, and involving them in your climate journey, basically, the same way as Philip has also done, basically, or I know Hostels has also done. I guess think about your audience. So consider their influence as well and their demands as well. So I think that's important. Mike has already alluded a little bit on what consumer demands are, but one of the key things that I also learned lately is that younger generations are actually also influencing older generations, which is interesting. So it's the young people that are now sort of infecting their parents and their grandparents in making those choices. So really think about your audience. I guess that's another important one. And then, of course, make sure that everything is expert backed. Make sure that calculations that you're running are as good as you can do. Make sure you get advice. I think those are some of the key things there.
Great, thank you. And I think about speaking of calculations, I have one very short one that I can perhaps build with that or on that. Is there a formula on how you calculate the CO2 footprint for products openly? And if so, where?
Yeah, that's a great question. The formula actually is very simple, but it depends on, so the formula that we typically use to estimate footprints is emission factor based. So basically what that means is there are certain emission factors for product categories. So it can be a category as broad as, I don't know, consumer electronics, but they can get granular and more granular. So it can also be an emission factor for a certain material, like cotton in fashion, for example. So the calculation is always based on emission factors times a certain weight or a price of a product, and that leads to an estimate on the emissions of a product. So it is, there can be price-based emission factors. For example, a laptop times €1,000 is an estimate. That's not very granular, so it can also be a cotton t-shirt of 95% cotton and 5%, I don't know, wool, times a certain weight is an estimate of that footprint. Those are some of the examples that I can give. Happy to take that into more detail, of course, in a direct call. But you know, depending on the, I guess the most important thing here is depending on the level of the data that you can provide us, we can go super granular. And this is just software based. Of course, Southpole also has a huge consultancy team who can actually help you with product-based LCAs as well, the output of which we can feed back into our software solutions. But happy to take that into more detail after this one.
Yes, I'll make sure that you have the right contact and connection for that question.
Maybe just a quick one to build on that. What we also would recommend is also show transparently how you calculate those emissions, right? Maybe on some categories, as Robert explained, we are super detailed, and maybe on some other products, we don't have all the information. And there's nothing speaking against not reporting that transparently also on your website for those consumers who want to know the details. I think there's nothing to hide, right? And yeah, we don't have to be perfect to get started.
Indeed,
Sorry for
indeed.
interrupting.
Thank you. No problem. This is where it's for. So I have here saying A&O, wow, you're doing a lot. Okay. Question is, how has climate action changed the way you do business so far? Philippe, it's for you.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I would really say, honestly, changed not less than the whole way we are working today. Means we question every business decision on the climate impact. To give you an example, we have made a really clear decision as largest hostel chain in Europe. We would never expand into a flight-only destination like Mallorca, for example. So you see, our entire company DNA is green, and we are very passionate about this topic.
Right. That sounds, yeah, that sounds very logical indeed. But I have one here again, I guess, that connects to that. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Ben. It says, how do you see the travel and especially the accommodation industry evolving over the coming years?
Yeah, I would say in the coming years, the topic of travel shame become an even more intensive focus. So I think the guests will increase traveling by train. They will travel less to long-haul destinations and definitely prefer products that provide clear and reliable information on climate impact. And to give you an example here on our actions as well, that's why, for example, we already indicate the individual CO2 consumption per trip on every booking confirmation and invoice we're giving out to our guests.
Right. Thank you so much. Maybe shall we tackle one more? I think this is a bit more general, but it says, why is it important for every e-commerce business to communicate about their climate journey? I guess it means more like why perhaps we need to take it more seriously over just posting about us being climate conscious. But Maggie, by all means.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sure others will have inputs as well. I think this is increasingly becoming a bigger demand from consumers. We've heard from all our speakers today that you know, the younger generation, but really not just them, but everyone is demanding to see more transparency from companies. They want to be responsible, and they want to find a way to work with their favorite brands to be able to be more sustainable. So I think there's that demand from customers and consumers, so that companies, you know, really do need to do their part in enabling their consumers and customers to do the right thing. And I think if you can show that there's alignment and shared values between what the company is doing and what the consumers want, I think that's a win-win really. And I think that's why you want companies to be talking about the climate, but I guess not just talking about it, but showing the impact, showing that they are putting resources and their efforts behind pushing and addressing climate change and really accelerating progress. Because I guess, you know, this is not just one company's problem. This is a global problem. And I think if we all talk about what we are doing, talk about the successes, everyone can collaborate and learn. So I think it's a big issue that everyone should come to work together.
I think it's safe to say as well that this is where you say you really have to walk the talk, right? So not just say, but do, simplistically, of course, but right. Just
Can I
an
offer
interesting
an addition to that, Lara? Because I also want to recognize the fact that Of course, everyone needs to take climate action. I think that's become clear also from the graphs that Michael showed earlier. I also I think we need to recognize the fact that that is still very much an investment, and that companies like A&O who are doing that are very much front runners. I'm hoping that Philip will also recognize or acknowledge the fact that there are first mover advantages to doing that. And so I think it's also just very simply put a smart business decision to be a first mover, that there are definitely advantages in terms of brand value and some of the conversion metrics that I highlighted to be gained. So if the question is like, why is it important for an e-commerce business to do this? I think there is a clear climate rationale, but there's also a very clear business rationale to do it.
Agree. Yep.
Right. So no problem. So we have 3 minutes left for the webinar. I think I'd like to take the time then to basically thank all our panelists, everyone, especially Philippe, for gracing us with your presence today. I hope it has been very engaging, at least, and the content was educational. And for all the attendees, thank you for registering and for attending today. And just as a reminder, the moment you log off or close this, there will be a survey prompter for you to fill in. Please kindly fill this in for us to be able to craft our content in an even better way the next time. I wish every one of you all across Europe, of course, as well, a very good rest of the day, and see you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.